Oh, hi. I didn't see you there. I'm Philbert D, and I'm a little less tired than last week. A little. This is Phil on Films. This week, Just a Stranger, Mina-anud, and Stuber.
Ann Curtis's May meets Marco Gumabao's Jericho in Lisbon. She is a trophy wife on vacation, unhappy with her marriage. He is an ambassador's son, feeling trapped by the demands of his family. The two have a one-night stand that becomes something more when they run into each other again back in the Philippines. They continue the affair, using each other as an escape from their respective unhappiness.
The most interesting thing about this movie is its depiction of a marriage that essentially becomes a mutual understanding of each other's unfulfilled needs. There's something compelling about the compromises that May and her husband make, and the very unusual acceptance of their very unideal predicament. It moves away from these trite expressions of betrayal and gets really weirdly practical. Now, there isn't a lot of it in there, but that pragmatism is the most unique aspect of this movie. But then there's the rest of it. The film is a lot less pragmatic about its central relationship. In its weakest moment, it even suggests something approaching romance. But all we're really seeing is a whiny little kid buried under all his privilege, and an older woman trying very hard to seem uninterested in something more substantial. The affair is very static for most of the movie. The characters experiencing very little that could be construed as growth until it's far too late. The last stretch of this movie is pretty unbearable, as it ascribes a depth of feeling to the relationship that was never really visible on screen. It makes its lead female character feel pretty pathetic. Also, this role should have never gone to Ann Curtis, who never really pulls off playing the older woman. There's too much visible vitality to her, making the disparity between her and her co-star seem completely negligible. Anyway, it just doesn't work. The tone is all over the place, and I really don't like where it all goes. 2 stars.
Jerald Napoles plays Carlo, the second best surfer in Samar. He and his best friend Ding, played by Dennis Trillo, unwittingly get their hands on a package of cocaine that washed up on the shores of the island of Mina-anud. This leads to an unexpected cash windfall, and the two decide to keep dealing. But the PDEA has been sniffing around, and the two aren't quite able to keep a low profile.
The movie is pretty well made. There's this shot early in the movie that might go down as one of the best surfing shots ever captured in cinema. And it's all pretty well paced, and there are a few strong stylistic choices that separate it from your average movie. But there's this cynicism to it that really bothers me. There really isn't anything to root for in this story, as the movie makes it pretty clear that everyone involved is venal, corrupt, or just plain stupid. The lead characters are underdogs, and that should make it easy to care about them. But the movie really goes out of its way to make them out to be fools. The back half of this film is mostly about waiting for the hammer to drop on these two hapless fellows. Their fate's already sealed because they're corrupt and because they're stupid. And it's just not fun. And given where we are now in this country, maybe it's not the best idea to just have another story about poor people getting into trouble because of drugs. And in all this, the movie is also bogged down by its juvenile humor and deeply masculine point of view. Apart from the rampant male gaze that stains the entirety of the movie also manages to fit in some gay panic along the way. Again, I think there is some obvious skill behind the camera, but as a whole, the movie is just too cynical for me to really enjoy. 2.5 stars.
Please be a 5-star ride.
Hey! Uber?
Yeah, be cool, be nice. I'm Stu. How do you do?
Compton.
Vic, played by Dave Bautista, is an LAPD officer obsessed with nabbing a drug trafficker played by Iko Uwais. Vic has just gotten LASIK surgery, and he's supposed to be taking a day off. But he gets a tip, and despite still having really blurry vision, he decides to follow up on it. Unable to drive, he calls an Uber. He ends up in the car of Stu, played by Kumail Nanjiani, who doesn't have an assertive bone in his body. Stu becomes Vic's unwilling partner on a wild goose chase through the criminal underbelly of Los Angeles.
There's something pretty old school about this movie, and it's most easily expressed through its use of violence. It doesn't aim for the bloodless PG-13 violence of modern action films. It sheds a lot of blood, and at times it might even elicit a genuine shudder from the audience. At the same time, it's very much a movie of the now. with two lead characters that talk a lot about what it means to be a man and all that. There's funny stuff in there, but it all just feels a little lazy, especially given the talent involved. It all falls to the direction, which doesn't get the most out of what the movie already has. It manages, for example, to get Dave Bautista and Iko Uwais and fight scenes together. But it's all shot too close, and it largely wastes the talent of the Indonesian martial artist. The action scenes as a whole don't quite gel in a way that would allow it to stand beside the 80s and 90s buddy action flicks that it's trying to emulate. It all just feels a little thrown together. The plot doesn't have the thrilling forward momentum that drives a really good action movie. The comedy feels a little easier than it could be. And the action sequences don't live up to the potential of the people involved. And in the end, it's just another story of a sensitive guy that learns to be a little more manly, and a manly guy who learns to be a little more sensitive. Yawn. 2.5 stars. Question time. Ibarra asks, pretentious film question for the next episode. I want to dive into Tarkovsky's filmography. Where should I start? What's the most accessible, digestible of his films? I think everybody agrees that Stalker is the one to go with. Like, you could go earlier into his filmography and there's interesting stuff, but what you'll see there are building blocks to Stalker. And Stalker is like him at the height of his powers, and it's fun little sci-fi tale. And accessible is questionable given your acceptance of Russian slowness or whatever. But no, Stalker's great. After that, go to Solaris. After that, Andrei Rublev. Now that'll test your patience, but check it out. And Mirror is his masterpiece, and you should see Mirror. I am batshit crazy asked, do you believe in separating the art from the artist? I'm referring to the likes of Spacey, Polanski, Bryan Singer, and Woody Allen. That's complicated. I am a straight up Polanski fan, but I really love Chinatown. I really love Rosemary's Baby. I will tell you, I have not watched any of his films in a while, and I plan to not go back to them. I can still say that I like those films, but I don't want to be put into a position where I'm still supporting these problematic people in any way. Even if there's like a big screening of Chinatown or something, I don't think I'm gonna go to it. It's just, my approach to this has always been like, I don't need to hold any one filmmaker in enough esteem that I can overlook the problems with them, because there's always more filmmakers. I think part of why I really enjoy Hereditary and Midsommar, Ari Aster's films, is because they kind of fill the place in my heart that I have for Rosemary's Baby. And kind of the reason I really like Under the Silver Lake from last year is because it kind of fills the place in my heart Chinatown had. So, you know, I can still acknowledge that those were great films, but I don't ever need to see them again. I'd rather go seek out young filmmakers who will eventually become problematic, but you know, for now, we're okay, I guess. Jack Awesome asks, do you watch trailers? I avoid watching them since they say disappointment is born of unmet expectations. That's a lot to pin on trailers. I don't seek out trailers. I go to movies, so I end up seeing trailers. But it's not, but sometimes I don't even pay attention. Sometimes I don't look up from my phone until the movie's actually rolling. That's not because I'm gonna be disappointed by stuff, because I think trailers are mostly terrible anyway. If anything, they're setting my expectations lower for most films. So I see trailers sometimes. I don't actively search for them. But yeah, they don't change my expectations for a film. I just keep going in, hoping that everything's going to be good, in spite of what everybody tells me. Thanks for joining us. Now, the PPP is coming up, and I know some of you asking, are you gonna see everything or whatever? Probably not. It's just, I don't even like supporting the PPP. I think it was a mistake to put that thing in the middle of the year, and I think, especially now that the way they're choosing films doesn't really allow for the most interesting films to come out. It just doesn't feel like worth my time to really seek out all of those films. But I'm gonna check out a few, and I'm gonna review a few, and I'm really looking forward to LSS, as I've said before. As for this, like and subscribe, leave a comment, ask questions, do all the internet things. And until next time, goodbye internet, keep Mayor Sanchez in prison.